Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
And I am your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast in the 20th century. Now, today, we are doing another artist appreciation episode. I think so far we've only done one, which was the Bare Naked Ladies episode some months ago back now. And we are focusing on a band that I think is even more underappreciated than Bare Naked Ladies, because if you're Canadian, you should know Bare Naked Ladies. They're pretty big there. But the band we're talking about today is the band called Brad. They are a rock band formed in Seattle, Washington in 1992. Tony, do you want to tell everyone who the founding members of Brad are?
So probably the most notable would be Stone Gossard of Pearl Jam on guitar, and then Shawn Smith, who unfortunately has passed away, on keys and vocals, and then Regan, I'm not sure which one he goes by, Regan Hagar on drums, and then Jeremy Toback on bass, who's now been replaced by some guy named Keith.
Yes, and there's a lot of history with this band. More so with who everyone in Brad were from other bands at the time. So I'm gonna do a really quick, brief history. So Tony already said you have Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam, right? Guitar. And this was Brad formed in 1992, which was in Pearl Jam had just released 10. They were working on Versus, so pretty early in Pearl Jam's career. Shawn Smith, he was in a couple of different bands. He was in a band called Satchel, which also featured Reagan on drums. And he was also in a band called Pigeonhead. So you have those two bands. And then Regan, he was also in another band called, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but Malfunction. Malfunction. Okay. Duh. I've never said it out loud, so I guess I didn't get the pun of it. Yeah. It's spelled like funk, but it's Malfunction. And that had Andrew Wood as the lead singer alongside with his brother, Kevin Wood. And Andrew Wood, you might know his name because he was the lead singer of the band Mother Love Bone, which of course featured Stone Gossard on guitar from Pearl Jam and Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam on bass. So a lot of Seattle history with these bands.
A lot of overlap.
A lot of overlap. Yeah, it's like you need a Venn diagram really to figure out these different bands. But we're talking strictly Brad today because Brad was a band that just after I got into Pearl Jam in my childhood, I, of course, got into Eddie Vedder's solo albums and whatnot. And when I found that Stone, had another band, I went and listened to it. And I had some friends send me some of their albums and I liked them right away. And I think I showed them to you too, Tony, and you liked them right away too, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
They have a sound that's, I don't know how you would describe it, Tony. They're rock, right? They're just on the Wikipedia page, they're just a rock band. Their first album kind of maybe has that 90s little bit of grunge, not heavy, but the production.
I don't know if I would say grunge.
You want to say grunge, but
no,
it's
I wouldn't
got,
go that far.
There's a little funk maybe.
Yeah, there's a little bit of kind of some funk tones in Nadine, for example.
Yeah, and then I feel after that, they kind of just kind of go more in a straight ahead rock sound. But I think what makes them special is they have a lot of piano. Shawn Smith, great pianist, and definitely more piano than in Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam, they didn't start doing piano until No Code. And then even then, it wasn't a thing they would do on every song on their album. So Brad has they have a very gentle sound, which I found unique and kind of drew me to them because they could do the rock songs and the kind of funky songs, and then they could do fantastic piano ballads. And really quick, I should mention, and I just found this out today, the they're called Brad, which is very it's it's
It's very
hard to
very
look
hard to find them online. So
online because when you just like search Brad, you're unlike Pearl Jam. When you search Pearl Jam, Google it, you're gonna get Pearl Jam. You search Brad, I mean, especially if you search Brad like music, you're gonna get like Brad Paisley and other artists whose first name is Brad. And I guess they wanted to originally call themselves Shame, which was ended up being the name of their first album. But there was already a band called Shame, and the front person for that band name was Brad Wilson. So they just used his first name as their band name, which I thought was funny.
yeah, I have
Um,
read that before, which I like the idea behind that, but I really hate the brand name Brad for the reasons we mentioned.
yeah,
Now,
I mean,
something
I don't.
I just found out is Reagan, he actually created the album art for Eddie Vedder's ukulele songs.
Yeah, I think I remember reading about that like a long time, like when ukulele songs came out. He does a lot of, I think, the artwork. I don't know if he did the newest album, the newest Brad album, but he's not. I think he's done music videos too before. Like
Oh well.
he's kind of like Jeff Ament, where they both are really into other mediums of art other than music, like photography and painting, which is always cool. Um, but yeah, so they ended up releasing 6 studio albums, and we're going to kind of end up talking about all of them today, including the one they just released a couple weeks ago, which unfortunately is their final studio album since, as Tony mentioned, Shawn Smith passed away um, in 2019. So, but Tony, why don't let's start from the beginning. Let's start with their first album, Shame. If I recall, Shame is your favorite Brad album. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. And
Why?
well, so as this album front to back, it's definitely front loaded. But that being said, though, the first 7 songs out of 11 song album are fantastic. That's the greatest run of Brad songs on an album they had by far. I feel very strongly about that.
I don't
Um,
disagree, actually, probably with that, at least that last statement.
and you had mentioned the band sounding kind of gentle, which I think is a pretty good way to describe them. But this first record definitely has the most kind of like stoner tones, some very laid back, slow songs. I think kind of like, um, like you think of bands that have slow songs, but some of these Brad songs, even if they're like kind of heavy, they're slow songs. And so I don't know. I think kind of between some of those qualities, it makes for a unique record. Very 90s production. So, I mean, even though I wasn't in the 90s, it still has like that nostalgic type of sound. Um, but I really like it. I think yeah, the 2 extremes on the album are like these really moody, slow ballads, and then some more kind of actually like kind of jam band songs, which
Yeah,
I feel like you don't see as many of those jam ones on some of their later mid albums.
I will say Shame, when I first heard all their albums, it was not one that like I liked as much as some of the others, just because it definitely is front loaded, like you said. And it like when it drops off, I almost just stopped caring about it. Like after good, well, for a while it was like after 20th Century, I didn't care about any of the other songs. Then I like sometime later I appreciated the song Good News, which is right after 20th Century. And
Yeah,
then
that one's great.
just last week when I got the reissue on vinyl for the first time, I really found an appreciation for Ray's Love, which is just kind of a little groovy jam track. And then I did appreciate a little bit of like We, which is the last song. Um, that said, the best songs are still like 1 through 5. But I will say, I don't. So my favorite on the album is probably the lead track, Buttercup, the album opener. That said, I don't think it's a good album opener. Like starting off with a ballad, I just don't think is ever the right move for an album,
I
especially
mean,
when Buttercup is Shawn Smith's attempt at writing a song like Purple Rain. Because not only does it have like the same chords, but like Prince was such a one of Shawn one of Shawn Smith's biggest influences when it came to musicians and songwriters, along with like Freddie Mercury, obviously Andrew Wood, even Chris Cornell I saw mentioned. But um, yeah, Buttercup as an opener, I love the song, I love the chords, I love the piano, I love the lyrics, but I don't know if I like it as an album opener. What about you?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think ballad for the opener is always kind of underwhelming. There's no way to really deny that.
Although it's a fantastic song, fantastic ballad.
But for like a vibe, it's that's the vibiest song on the whole record. So I think there is some value to it opening the record. But honestly, I think I'd rather just get something a little more engaging because I could see someone like being like, okay, this is like pretty, but it's kind of boring.
Yeah, 20th Century maybe even would have been a better opener.
Nah, it's a little too lightweight. My fingers all the way.
But that's a good second song. My Fingers is just a good rock song. I think Nadine, though, I think I like Nadine even better than My Fingers. Nadine just has, I love the chorus of Nadine.
Yeah, that one's hard to not like.
And then Screen, again, is another kind of piano ballad like Buttercup, but it's like darker. And it just has like a fantastic solo from Stone.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most emotional song off the record.
But yeah, I love Good News. And then, but yeah, like Down, Bad for the Soul, which I know is like supposed to be just a short little song.
The interlude.
Rockstar, like I don't know, those aren't my favorite. Those like 3 run of songs just don't do a lot for me.
Yeah, Rockstar is kind of a throwaway. Well, Rockstar and Bad for the Soul are like the throwaways, but Bad for the Soul is cooler because it's got a cool slap bass line and it's shorter. And then like we and Down, they're like once again that kind of stoner sound. They're these slow songs that have a cool texture, but We just goes on way too long.
I also did learn today that this album was mixed by Brendan O'Brien.
Was it really?
Yeah, which is shouldn't be so surprising because he he starts showing up on Pearl Jam albums, verses, and then like takes over for most of their run. But
Yeah,
and then I also
I
the
actually
album
really like the
cover.
production though.
Oh, the production on Shame is really good. I hate the album cover, by the way, but I guess it was shot at the Seattle's Crocodile Cafe, which I've actually seen a show there before.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yes. But yeah, Shame is
I kind of like
a
the
good
album cover, kind of.
It's I don't like the faces. It's a little creepy. But that said, I think Shame is it's a great debut album for a band. Unfortunately, with all the other big bands in Seattle at the time, they just never got their due. 20th Century, I guess, was actually a minor hit in the UK. But
Really?
other than that, it just made no wave, no splashes. And so that was in 1993. Then we get Interiors in 1997, which I think the long gap is just because Pearl Jam really took off. And I like Interiors, I would say a good bit more than Shame. I think Interiors is like a step up. I think to me, there's only like kind of one song in Interiors that I don't love. I pretty much love the rest. There's kind of one where I will just say this. I do not love Upon My Shoulders. There is kind of a cool part in the middle with like I think I think they might be like cellos. That is pretty cool. But I don't love that song. And then I don't love the ending of the last song, those 3 words. I think it just goes on a bit. But the album, again, like Shame, the first like 4 songs just rip. They're fantastic. And then there's some really great deep cuts near the kind of back end of the album. I guess they're all deep cuts, but like there's just some really pretty piano songs kind of near the end that I really like.
I mean, I think kind of once again though, a lot of these songs kind of, even the ones that you kind of mentioned you didn't like, do have the characteristics of like Brad, slow songs, kind of that stonery sound again. Upon My Shoulders just being like a big drone, very dramatic. And that one, it's like that one and Funeral Song. They're both like 4.5 to 5 minute long songs. They're both very kind of one toned. Those 3 words also being the other sort of, that big space pad at the end. And I don't know. I think it's a more balanced album. But that being said, I just don't think the highs are as high on Interiors versus Shame. But I think this album kind of solidifies that sort of like rock sound of the band will kind of gravitate towards for the next few albums.
Yeah, they definitely, there's not many
away from the jam band.
And there's not really funk on this album. I think actually those three words, the beginning, is the most kind of funk you get.
Oh, by far.
Because like the opening song, "Secret Girl," fantastic song, but it's just like a straightforward rock song. But it's
Secret Girl's a little straightforward for me. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of depth to that.
Secret
one.
Girl's too straightforward for you? Is that what you said?
It's a little bit straightforward.
Yeah, but it's just a fun song. The Day Brings used to be my favorite, and it still might be from the album. But I actually forgot Mike McCready plays the lead on The Day Brings.
Is he really?
Yeah, he does the lead in the solo.
Doesn't Stone play it in the music video?
Possibly. Yeah,
maybe they don't show the actual solo part. I guess
I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that music video. But I mean, I love like songs like "Lift" and "Sweet Old George." They're just such great rockers. The dark piano of "I Don't Know" I think is fantastic. Some Never Come Home. I just love the melodies. They're just so like kind of sweet and soft. Circling the Line has kind of a cool vibe. I think it has like some acoustic guitars in there too that kind of play well with the piano.
That Jeremy sings.
What do you mean? He sings
on Circle and Line.
The whole song?
I think so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No,
I'll have to go back and listen. I will say, this last week I've been listening to a lot of Brad in prep for this episode. And for some reason I didn't make it all the way through Interiors. Like I was listening in the car and I got to a certain point and then I had to get out of the car. So unfortunately I missed like some of Interiors. So I'll have to go back and listen. And I didn't catch that, because I will say this, I guess we should kind of talk to kind of like what each band member brings to the albums and songs. Shawn Smith has such a powerful voice, but it's like different than like, okay, like Eddie Vedder's, if we're comparing bands from the same time, like Shawn Smith, his voice is like, it's powerful, but he can also like really bring it to like an intimate sound when he wants to, like for the piano ballads, the softer songs. But during the rock songs, he can let loose, and he's got a very unique...
I mean, I wouldn't phrase it like that.
Well, not like...
I mean, I think he can... His voice doesn't scream powerful to me, but he can make the rock songs kind of explosive in his own way. Like he has a certain style soul that elevates the level, the energy. Yeah, he brings soul to it.
I do think he brings soul. Yeah. He doesn't have like, he didn't have the like lung capacity probably of like Chris Cornell or Eddie Vedder or any of the 90s singers, but like he had a very unique voice for the 90s, I will say. A voice that I loved. I thought he was truly talented. He has I've heard some of his solo albums are fantastic, and he sounds great live. I mean, to be able to sing a song like when they covered, which we'll get to, but when they covered Neil Young's "Don't Cry," like to be able to sing that song better than Neil Young, I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is one sick cover.
So after Interiors, we get to 2002's album "Welcome to Discovery Park," which, if I recall, that's an actual park in Washington. I think in Seattle, if I'm correct. I think "Welcome to Discovery Park," I think it's a more interesting album than Interiors. And other than like the two songs near the end that I don't love, I might like it more than Interiors. Again, they have something about like their first, at least I think on this album, I really like everything up until really All Is One, which is like the 9th track. But some of them had to grow on me. Like, I think both of our favorites from this album has to be "Never Let Each Other Down," correct?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
That song, you can maybe explain it more, like the musicality of it. I don't know what it is, but like, I don't know if you'd call it is a ballad, but it's like really like it's a casual ballad. I don't know how to describe it. It's smooth. It's like it's endearing. It's like sweet, but it has kind of like sad touches to it, like bittersweet kind of.
I think for me, what I like about "Welcome to Discovery Park," and this leads into the song, As I think in Interiors, there was like the best songs were some of the more straightforward rock ones, but I don't think they really pulled off any of the kind of like the vibey songs as well as they did on Shame. But with Discovery Park, Never Let Each Other Down is like a great vibey song that's super moody, great acoustic sound, and it just has this kind of like um just kind of like this push to it. It's steady, it's smooth. There's like a really cool like keyboard sound they do in the chorus. I mean, it's a very unique song.
A lot of
I
chord
remember
changes,
hearing
right?
this. Yeah, a lot of chords just thrown at you, but it's definitely a standout song. I don't think I've really heard many songs that sound like that.
Yeah, the acoustic is in it is great, like you mentioned.
And then I also love the song that follows it too. If you could make it good, very
Yes,
dynamic.
that one was a grower. Like when I listen to the album now, even though like I'm most excited to hear "Never Let Each Other Down," I'm also equally excited to hear if you can make it good because it it's also kind of like a ballad. Like it even starts off more low key than "Never Let Each Other Down," but like it builds, and when it gets to like the climax and I guess the bridge where he's just that fly and it's just going on and the music in the background just goes like higher and higher. Oh, it's fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's probably the album's strength is just it's very vibey and like Shame really has a sound and so does Interiors, but there's a unique quality, a unique tone to the album. But I think in some ways that's kind of the downfall as well. I think if maybe there was a few more songs that are just a little more rock, because like near the
But
end you do get like a rock song right before the end. Yes, you are, but that's like a 5.5 minute song and two.
oh,
Uh,
Yes You Are isn't the rock one though.
oh, is it not a rock one?
No, Yes You Are is actually the slower one. The
Oh,
one I think you're
I'm thinking
thinking
of
of
All
is
Is One. Yeah.
All Is One, which it looks like the person who wrote the music was actually Mike Berg, who looks like he kind of was like a fill-in member at this point in the band's career where he did some keyboards, some piano, some bass. Because I think this is like when Jeremy Toback was like kind of about to leave the band. Um, all is one, and the very last song, which I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's R
Let's just say
R R,
Ericus.
Ericus. Like all is one is like a rock. That's like the most grunge song they maybe you've ever done. Like it's very dark sound. Like it's very like just like minor key. It's very moody. It's very kind of angsty. But I don't know. It just doesn't sound like Brad to me. And then
I
Ericus,
mean, I like it. It's sort of like if I had to compare it to like a Pearl Jam album, it's kind of like what is
binaural.
it? No, like on Riot Act. What is it? Uh, is it called You Are?
Oh, oh, see, I like You Are way better.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
think You Are is better, but I think that's why I get it kind of confused with the title of Yes You Are.
But then Ericus,
Um,
the last song, it's a really weird song. It's like slow. It's like a really it's vibey, but like in a very depressing way. It sounds like it would be like a video game soundtrack to like a really dark game, if that makes
right,
sense.
and once again, another very slow song.
And then it has like a really long outro of just like kind of quiet noise, and it sounds like a door closing. It's a very I would love to like and obviously now we can't talk to Shawn Smith, but like any Reagan or Stone to ask them like the thought process to like some of these production choices because some of them on this album are weird, for sure, not in a bad way, just interesting. To me, my other favorite on this album is La La La. Like I know for you it might be too straightforward of a rock song, but it's just very fun. Great kind of wall solo from Stone near the end. And then I really like some of the acoustic. I mean, because the beginning of the album has like Drop It Down. That one's kind of got a funky kind of rock sound.
Yeah, that one's
Um,
cool.
Brothers and Sisters and Shining are just two light, kind of more lightweight acoustic songs to begin the album, which is great. There's a lot of great acoustic songs on this album. Taking It Easy, I think it's just like a very breezy, easygoing song, acoustic. And then Sheepish and Couch T-Bone are kind of like really weird songs. It says Stone wrote the lyrics to Sheepish, which makes sense because
Oh, really?
it's got that very quirky sound from Stone. And then Couch T-Bone also sounds like Stone probably wrote the music because that also has a very kind of just Stone quality. But I don't know. I think all those songs, Taking It Easy, Sheepish, all is not all is one, but Couch T-Bone, they all have a similar kind of cohesive sound that I enjoy. And then you do have another rocker with Revolution, which I guess actually Reagan wrote the music to that one, which makes sense. It's definitely the most like the fastest and most energetic song on the album. Less
Yeah,
less
definitely like
rock
kind of
songs
more
than
punk.
Interior. Yeah. Definitely less rock songs on this album than Interior. This is the album where if you want some more soundscapes, some like kind of more vibey, kind of acoustic, more piano, it's this one where Shame was kind of the more upbeat album, but like kind of more funky, sometimes laid back, and then like
Well,
Interiors is kind of the rock.
yeah, I always think of Shame kind of as like a jam band sort of album. Like it just kind of feels a little jammy in a good way, like with like the funky elements in it. Where Interiors is kind of the most straightforward rock at this point, and then like you're saying, yeah, more the soundscape, moodiness, the cohesion, all of that's in Discovery Park for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I love to go back to Discovery Park because it just has a little bit of everything for me. Um, that said, I think there's less misses for me on Interiors. Interiors, I think, has more solid songs, but I think the risk they take on Discovery Park pay out better. So then after that album, their fourth album, Best Friends, they started recording in 2003, right after Welcome to Discovery Park. But I think between Pearl Jam and all the other band members, other bands, they did not finish and release this album until 2010, like 7 years later. And I think this is around the time when I like got into Brad because I remember when this album came out, like, being into Pearl Jam, like I remember it was making some news. And I think one of these songs ended up being one of the free iTunes songs that they would do like weekly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I want to say it was Rush Hour, maybe that was the free one. And even though this is the album appreciation episode, I think, we want to talk about all these albums and give our, truthful. I mean, Brad is still, fantastic band. They're one of the bands I've seen live the most somehow. And, I want to eventually own all their albums on vinyl one day. I think for Tony and I, we both think they're just, a great band, but we want to be truthful. And for me at least, Best Friends is my least favorite Brad album.
I think you can be appreciative, and still have
Oh
a
yeah.
least favorite.
And there are some great moments on this album. I mean, every Whisper to me is like the most classic song on this album. Like it kind of starts off piano but then like the song has some kind of like breezy choruses, and then like the ending, they kind of pick up the pace a little bit. There's like some guitar solos from Stone, and then Shawn's vocals like start getting more passionate. So every Whisper, I think, is like one of the best moments on the album. I also love the follow-up song, One Love Remaining, where he's just kind of talking. Like it's like this kind of slower kind of song. And he's just like, he's not even singing. He's just like talking during the verses. There's like a lyric where he's like, "You're gonna need a raincoat," which I just find hilarious. And then the two kind of more rock songs on this album, Low and Oh My Goodness, I think are just great little rock songs. My problem is the first three songs, they're not bad, but they're also like just longer than they need to be, especially Without Regret and Rush Hour. And then I just don't love like the last four songs. Running for Cover, the closer, is not too bad, but I don't get a lot out of Luxury Car, Bless My Father, or Holiday. So for me, that's where the album really falters.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like you're being a little critical there on some of the moments there. Like for example, I think Rush Hour is one of the best songs easily. Like it has like the long intro, but when it comes in though, it's heavy.
Well, I think
Or wait, no, wait, it doesn't have a long intro.
no, that's you're thinking
Without
of
Regret.
Without Regret.
So
That's
even
what I'm
better then.
talking about.
Even
This
better.
album, they blend in a little much. No, I will say because Rush Hour is a song where the chorus is basically just him singing "Baby,"
And that's
which
like the best part.
it is the best part.
With like that drop D riff.
And I will say, like, Without Regret does have like it is kind of more of a rocker. It's just a little bit of a maybe long rocker, and especially for the tempo, it's a little slower. I think the tempo. That's why I love Low, even though Low has that kind of halftime feel in the chorus. But like, Oh My Goodness was always one of my favorites because it's by far, I think, maybe the fastest tempo on the album.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I feel like my thing with this album is I do think there's a lot of great moments on it, But I think Low and Oh My Goodness, like they put like the two kind of lightweight but good rockers right next to each other.
Yeah.
When they began the album, Price of Love and Without Regret kind of are both really um not like moody as in like they have a certain sound to them, maybe in the harmonic palette. Those are kind of together, and then like Luxury Car into Bless My Father and a Holiday into like I don't know. The section they're kind of grouped together in a way that blurs.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
And that being said, I do like Luxury Car though. I think that one kind of stands out, just being like the keys and the voice. I think the production's really nice on there.
yeah. I don't, there's something about like Holiday kind of has like not a reggae sound, but like it has that certain like rhythm to it that I see what they were going for, and then like Bless Me Father is kind of like the bluesy kind of acoustic song, if that makes sense. So they definitely have like certain like sounds that they were going for. I just don't love them.
I mean, I like I
Again,
like I like the chorus in Bless Me Father.
yeah, it's okay. Like, there's no really any of these albums so far, other than maybe like that last song off Welcome to Discovery Park, and maybe the couple songs on Shame. Like, I don't like dislike any of these songs. Any of the ones that are my least favorites. Like, I still put them above. Like, I do think some of Brad's like worst songs are better than the worst songs from other bands that I like even Pearl Jam. Like, I think they're very consistent. They were, even though they only released 6 albums, which means they didn't have like a ton of songs, I think they were very consistent as a band.
Yeah, I would say so. I think like I think the only thing with Brad is I think sometimes they can be a little underwhelming, some of their songs. Or like we talked about, they kind of drone on a little long.
But they've also, I feel like Brad songs have grown on me a lot over the years. Like the songs that I didn't love on first listen because I was so in love with some of the other moments on the albums, I now really appreciate. And I don't know if it's just because ever since Shawn Smith passed away, it just some of the songs feel like they hit a little deeper. But I think that's the uniqueness of Brad, is that they don't always like come out swinging super hard. Sometimes their strong points are in like the minor details of some of the songs.
Yeah, I think they do have a unique sound, which is kind of a little bit hard to kind of place. But I think that's a good point. I think subtlety does work, with them, if that makes sense.
Now, with their fifth album, came out in 2012, called United We Stand. That was the album that, like, after I had been a fan of the band for a couple years since before this album dropped. And when it came out, I don't know if you were there, Tony, but I know Tess and we went and saw them perform at Easy Street Records in Seattle. Then we got I got my vinyl copy of the album signed. I think Tessa got her CD copy signed. I got a little picture with Stone and Shawn Smith. And then I went and saw them at their headlining show, their main show at the Showbox, which was fantastic. Although they didn't play any songs from Welcome to Discovery Park, sadly. And then I know for sure we all went and saw them at I can't forget what the one right out of the outdoor venue that's right outside the Space Needle. I forget what that's called, but
I can't tell you either.
We saw them kind of at like a somewhat like kind of small show. And so I don't know if it's just because of like that's when I was like probably the biggest fan of the band at that time. And I think this was like when Pearl Jam was like in between albums. Like this was like new music that I was just really in love with. This album will always have like probably the most special place in my heart. I will say this is the album where they kind of keep it really simple and they kind of go for a more straight ahead rock sound. I mean, songs like Diamond Blues, it's just like a fun rock song. Miles of Rope, the album opener, fun rock song. Even like The Last Bastion, like it's not, that one's not, I wouldn't say fun, but it's just like rock
That one's
song.
sick.
Teabag, really quick, short kind of rock song, right? And then this album has a lot of acoustic songs on it. The Only Way, very acoustic. Make the Pain Go Away, I think one of their best ballads. Literally just, I think, Shawn Smith and Stone on acoustic guitar. Needle and Hay also gets some acoustic vibes in the verses. Way less piano too. I feel like there's only like really two
Needle
big
and
piano
Thread.
songs. Hmm?
Needle and Thread. You said
What did I?
Needle and Hay.
Oh yeah, I meant needle. Yeah, you're
I was
right.
I was
Needle,
like I was like, why is
needle
this
and
not
thread.
sounding right?
Yeah, needle and thread. And then really the only piano songs on this album is Bound in Time. And then of course you do get that kind of organ sound on Reason to Be in My Skin. And then the closing track, which is kind of like a piano ballad. So I feel like this album has like kind of three sounds and it's a little bit more simple than even it's I would say it's even more simple than Best Friends. But I just like the vibes on this album way more than Best Friends. I just think all the songs sound great. I don't really have one that I like really don't like. The only thing I think that could have made this sound better is Waters Deep was like a song they released ahead of the album as a single, and it was released on a 45 special 45 for Record Store Day that year, but it was never on the album. And I think it easily could have replaced a song like The Only Way. That's my only complaint.
Well, no, I would swap out what is it? Where's the song? I would swap out Diamond Blues and put Waters
No,
Deep
I
instead.
love
No,
Diamond Blues used to be my favorite. I love that song. It's just a fun song. Like it's not like a special song. Like I think the song Bound in Time has more complexity to it, but I love Diamond Blues.
I don't know. It's just them singing to like a power chord riff.
But it's
That
fun.
not my favorite. But I think
It's
there's other
fun.
songs on the album that are more fun. That are
So
also
I
a
have a
little
feeling
more.
this is well, I don't know. You never really said a best. I think you did say Shame was your favorite, right? But did you say Best Friends was your least favorite?
I mean, maybe just because the songs blend in a lot, and I don't know. I think there are some really good songs to this album. United We Stand. That is like I think Bound in Time is pretty cool. You know, it's very moody, not as slow as maybe some of their other songs, but still that kind of that thick heaviness.
But they're
And then
kind of
yeah,
a poppy
like
chorus.
right, like it's catchy still, which I think is good. Um, and I will say, The Only Way, does that intro remind you of Drive by the Cars a little bit? Like with that keyboard lead?
You know what? I never thought about it. And the second you said it, I was about to just go like, "What are you talking about?" But then I started kind of playing it in my head, and I kind of get I definitely see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah. Next time you listen to it, think about that because it's very reminiscent of it. I mean, the song quickly changes, but
yeah, and I Drive is maybe my favorite car song. I love Drive. Um,
great song.
yeah. Funny enough, I actually just the other day at the record store, I bought their first album on vinyl, which doesn't have Drive.
Oh,
But
nice.
you just made me think of that since you mentioned the Cars. Yeah. Funny enough, I bought a version that the sticker said it was blue. The vinyl was blue, but when I opened it up, it was not blue.
That is disappointing.
Yeah, but yeah, that first Cars album is fantastic. It's kind of like an album that every rock fan should own. Um, but no,
And honest, and Candy O too. Candy O's sick.
yeah, I used to own that one. I'll have to. It's been a while since I've heard that one. They're a band that I like. Their albums are great, but also just their greatest hits are great because like their greatest hits are some of their best songs.
Yeah, their
Um,
hits definitely high quality.
but no, I think United We Stand. I still think it is one of the strongest albums just because like there are less experimental moments, and like I said, for the most part, is kind of less piano. But like I don't know, the album has a really great flow. Like listening front to end, I think it's great. I think like pairing Make the Pain Go Away with Needle and Thread, great. I think like Reason to Be in My Skin and a Diamond Blues is great. Miles of Rope into Bound in Time is great. Like again, I don't think there's really any weak moments. And again, the only thing I would have changed is to add in Waters Deep. Even if they just because the album's only 10 songs long, they could have just added in what Waters Deep because Waters Deep, that's the song with just like a great riff from Stone and fantastic vocals from Shawn. Like that song used to be like one of my favorite and it still is. Like I don't listen to it a lot because I don't think it's on streaming services. The only way to listen to it is either YouTube or if you have the 45 like I have. But that's a fantastic song, Waters Deep. Check it out.
I do have to throw out here that I do really like a lot of the guitar tones on this album. Just like Last Bastion with that real like fuzzy
Yeah, you always loved that one,
riff.
didn't you?
Yeah, but then even on like Miles of Rope, there's some great like crunch tones going on, just kind of real like raw garage rock, but like still really like refined.
And that song shouldn't work because the main hook of that song is Shawn Smith just going, Na 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 na
Which that can get a
na 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 na. Yeah,
little annoying after a little
but I
bit
don't know. I've
though.
always loved it. Like I always found it like almost like him, like almost like a little kid going na na na, which should be annoying, but I don't know. I've always enjoyed it. But yeah, I agree. The guitar tones on this album are great. I think the guitar tones on Diamond Blues is great too. But I know you disagree.
Some
But
of the
then you
composition there.
but then you also have T-Back too, which has kind of the more kind of punk sound that you have like on their
That's like
song.
a
Like,
best friend song.
well, no, actually, well, it is kind of like a, oh my goodness, but it also kind of reminds me of Revolution a little bit from Welcome to Discovery Park.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Um, so yeah, fantastic album. Sadly, that was the last one they released while Shawn was alive. So then we get to 2019 is when Shawn passed away, and they were working on their final album. Well, they were working on their newest. It wasn't going to be their final album. I think they were going to keep making albums, but after he passed away, after the rest of the band members, I mean, we forgot to mention Keith Lowe joined the band during United We Stand. That was his like first album with the band, and he like did all the tours with them. And you also, I want to point out, you also had kind of an addition to the band. I'm going to butcher his last name, but Happy Chester. Um, he was like also like their kind of fifth member, especially during the live shows. I know when we saw them live, he was on stage providing extra guitar and piano. And also too, this is when they covered "Don't Cry," the great Neil Young song from his '90s album Freedom. Fantastic. That was the B-side to the Waters Deep 45. But so yeah, so after 2009, Shawn passed away. The band members took some time to grieve, and then in 2003, they decided, hey, we have enough here to finish this last batch of songs we were working on, make it our final album. So a couple weeks ago, they released their final album titled "In the Moment That You're Born." And when they dropped the first single, the title track, months ago, it caught me off guard because I thought it was like, just knowing Brad, I was expecting it to be kind of a piano ballad. And especially with the title, I thought it was going to be kind of like a sweet piano ballad song. It is not. It is like a dark, like kind of heavy, kind of droning rock song. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of the one like We're Bound in Time. Like it's heavy and it goes on for a while. This one definitely being heavier and slower. Definitely like grungier. Like this is one of the few times I think it's like this is pretty much just a grunge song, but it's still done in its own Brad way.
Very deep vocals too for Shawn on this song. Like I don't know if that was like if as I would have to assume some of these songs, and I read an article where for sure one of these songs he didn't do a second take that he wanted to do before he passed away, but I don't know if some of these songs like they had to take the vocal takes that they had from him and then like kind of alter them, maybe, like add reverb or whatever, but like they're very deep in this. And I also read too, I think Stone just said in an interview that around this time he had found like a lower octave in his vocal range that he wanted to start experimenting with, which is why there's some songs on this album where he's singing in a lower tone, which I find very fascinating, and it works perfect for this song, for the title track. I don't know, as a first single, it's definitely not like single quality because it's like one of the longest songs on the album, and it is pretty slow and it is a little repetitive, but I really enjoyed it.
It is the longest, 5 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yeah, and it is a little repetitive. There's a part in the middle where the chords do change, which I really like because it adds, kind of a fresh quality to the song. But I just find it is super. There's something to it that is very intriguing to me. Like the lyrics too. Like I don't quite know what he's singing. We haven't really mentioned a lot about lyrics on Brad songs. I think that Shawn had very interesting lyrics. Like sometimes he sang songs in a straight ahead way where you knew what he was singing about. But then there was like songs like, I know we keep mentioning About in Time for whatever, but like that song is like he's singing about soldiers in the middle of war. But I can't quite figure out if that's like a metaphor for something or if he's literally singing about soldiers, like there are some songs where he would sing where like "Reason to Be in My Skin," very straightforward, kind of personal song, but then like "Teabag," like what is that song about? Like what why is it called "Teabag"? You know, like there are some moments where it's just you don't know what he's singing about, and the moment you're born feels like it's a very kind of transcendental song. Like it's very like I don't even just that title I find very intriguing in the moment that you're born. And I found it to be a very like when I heard that was the title of the album and the song, when it was announced, I don't know, maybe just because of his passing, I found it to be very it was evocative, but of what I don't know.
I mean, not my favorite name for an album, but I
I
do
like
see what
it.
you're saying, though. I do see where you're coming from.
I think when I first heard the title, I was like again, I thought, oh, this is kind of more cutesy. Like when you think of like a child being born, but then like,
I did have that
yeah, but
same,
then the song is so
quick
heavy.
surprise.
Yeah, that when you hear the song, you're like, oh, like this is like a monstrous song, slow, like really heavy, sludgy song. Like it's like powerful, but like not in the way you're expecting. It made me like re-question the title itself. Like I don't I do think it's one of the more interesting moments on the album. But as an
So
album as a whole, this is so far this year out of all that ugh, too much talking. Uh we did an episode a couple weeks ago where we reviewed a ton of albums, right? The new Ben Folds, new Queens of the Stone Age, new Foo Fighters, and then we also reviewed the Jason Isbell a couple weeks later. This is another new release, so Tony and I are going to kind of talk about it as a new release because out of all the Brad albums, this is the one we've heard the least because it's still very new to us. So, what were your overall thoughts on this album?
I actually liked it a little more than I expected to. Um, and the reason why it isn't because I had like lower expectations, because it's the album it came out after Shawn had passed away. But I actually really enjoyed it because it did have some throwback to Shame and their earlier work. That being that kind of jam band sound, and I think it worked surprisingly well for them.
What were your standout moments?
I mean, Pieces of Sky in My Hand definitely has to be one of them. It's very reminiscent of like My Fingers from Shame. Yeah,
I got that too from the first listen.
So yeah, that was really cool to hear that song, and then even just like the other single as well. Hey Now What's the Problem? Like that's just these fat punk, power chords. Definitely a straightforward rocker as well.
Oh, so you like those power chords, but you don't like Diamond Blues power chords?
Well, yeah, because at least the vocals are doing something different, and this guitar tone's pretty sick. But then also the album does have some classic Brad moments, like I'm Digging You. That sounds totally classic Brad right there. It was kind of cool because they kind of saved that towards the end of the album as well. Still definitely a handful of like kind of more ballad type songs, but I think all of them have interesting things about them. I think I was just kind of surprised that this album has a lot of ballads, but it also has a lot of like kind of like garage rock type of sounds.
Not a lot in between.
I think they work together. Yeah, it really is. Here's a rock one, and here's not a rock one.
One of the I would say in between moments is Straight to the Hoop.
Straight to the Hoop. I was just about to say. I think that one does actually do some blending.
That was a weird one. I know when you texted me, you're like, what? I don't know what you said, but you were like shocked when you first heard the intro to that song.
Yeah, because it seemed like it was gonna be like another. It kind of seemed like how Pieces of My Sky is My Fingers. It almost seemed like it was gonna go to a Nadine type song after, but then it goes instead to like
I would almost say A Bound in Time, kind of.
No.
Like the verses amount, not the chorus, because after like the intro of Straight to the Hoop, like it kind of has like the same groove throughout the whole song, but it's a very interesting groove. Like it's very like.
I'll tell you right now, I know exactly what it is.
What is it?
It's Bound in Time mixed with The Day Brings. That's the vibe.
Really?
Yeah.
It is the hardest song to kind of like find words to describe out on the album. I think like it's like there's like moments too where it's like he's very passionate in his singing, and he's like, there's like a line where he's like, "You never come home" or something that sounds like very like sad. And the song does to me kind of have like a sad tinge to it, but it does have some really cool guitar parts from Stone, like some cool guitar tones as well. It, that's I think the most interesting song on the album. It's just very like it's very Brad. Like that's the only way I can describe it. It's very Brad. That intro though with like the like acoustic guitar, like funk strums, and like the drums seem like they're in a weird time signature. I don't even know how to describe that intro.
Yeah, it's definitely a little fun moment in there. Kind of seems out of place though, but for some reason I still like it though.
Yeah, they end up making it work. The whole song is in that intro. Like they quickly go into another part, but they bring back the intro. I think one other time during this like middle of the song too.
Yeah, I think very briefly. I think what's kind of interesting about this album is they kind of so they put all kind of like the heavy and psychedelic stuff kind of in the first 4 songs, really. Because Stars in You, I mean, it's how would you even describe that one, Rico?
Well, I'm going to first describe it by giving the history of the song. Stars in You was originally recorded, or sorry, it was originally written by Malfunction, which was that band we mentioned earlier that featured
of Reagan
and Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. And I think they wrote it, but I don't think they ever recorded it because Malfunction only had one album released and then like random songs here and there. But I could not find a Malfunction version of Stars in You, but I read that it was written by the band. So I'm assuming lyrics probably by Andrew Wood. But they never, I guess, released a version of it. And Stone said that like before 2019, before Shawn passed away, when they were working on this album, sometimes it was hard for the band members to all get in the same studio because they're all doing other, projects. And Stone was like, well, I mentioned to Shawn, like, hey, we should go in the studio and record him, Andrew Wood song. And I guess that always got Shawn in the studio because he loved Andrew Wood. He would always like in a live set and even during a Brad live set, he would always play like Crown of Thorns, which is a Mother Love Bone song, and also like Purple Rain kind of back to back. So when Stone told Shawn like, hey, let's get in the studio and record a cover of a Andrew Wood song, like Shawn like raced to the studio, and I guess that was like one of the first songs they recorded for this album. So that's like history with that song. So technically it's a cover.
Did not know that.
How to describe it? I don't know. It's like it's a little it's like a soundtrack to like a motorcycle video game or something. Like it reminds me
the
of
exact same thing.
It reminds
some Road
me
Rage.
of
Road Rash.
Road Rash, yeah, the PS1 video game, I think. Where you did races on motorcycles. Yeah, it's a very energetic song, like the fastest song on the album, maybe besides no, it probably is the fastest. Maybe
it's got to be the problem,
fastest. But it's like it starts off with like those really, I will say those vocals from Shawn, that's like some where he kind of lets loose, right? So like that
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like he lets loose on the vocals and like the guitars just come in. It's like it's very in your face, very energetic.
There's like the cool like flanger guitar thing going on throughout.
Yeah, and the chorus is like really catchy and it changes kind of the rhythm a little bit of the song.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that this album starts off kind of like Shame with all the rock songs, but there's like 4 songs in a row that are kind of like the most psychedelic on the album too. But then you get into
Pieces of Sky in My Hand definitely has like it has rock riffs, but it has the progressions in that song to me is what makes it psychedelic. Like not so much like the tones, but like the chords and the notes that like Stone's playing.
I mean, plus just the title of the song too.
Yeah. But then you're gonna say what we get hit with like the 2 ballads right after those 4 songs.
Yeah, Brad always seems to love putting 2 ballads in a row. But when you have so many, I guess you can't just always alternate them. So you have Meadow and Autumn, which I actually kind of really like the bulk of it. It's a little bit long, but it's really catchy. It's kind of endearing in a way. I would say
it's probably my least favorite.
The outro is kind of unnecessary, where it's like the whole acoustic up tempo bit.
What I read was that this was the song on the album where maybe that ending, I guess he only had a one vocal take and he wanted to record it again, but he didn't get to it before he passed away. And so then they brought in like I think it's a saxophone, some type of horn instrument, and they kind of added that over his vocals to kind of give it to kind of like fill out the sound. But like the ending of the song, like Stone's like acoustic playing, he just starts doing this like I don't know how you describe it, like the rhythm of it is like this like little like kind of like there's like a little skip to it, like it because the song is just kind of like a straightforward like piano ballad, like slower, but then it does this like kind of like
A little bit
almost
of a
like
hop to it,
Irish. Yeah, like I don't know, it's
a little
interesting.
jig.
I will say like it's the song just it's pretty, and I think the lyrics are pretty. Like, just even the title, like Meadow and Autumn, is has a nice ring to it. I just found like the melodies not to be as strong as some of the others. I actually preferred the following song, which is also a ballad called "Take Me Home,"
Really?
because take when the song first starts, it has a tinge of this Pearl Jam song that most people hate because it was not a serious Pearl Jam song. In fact, I can't even think of like the full title. It's called like I think it's called like Olympic Platinum, and it was on one of their
Hmm.
Christmas singles. And it's like this really goofy ass song. It's really like it was meant to be like a joke song, but the chords in it kind of remind me of this song, and it kind of has like and it I wonder if Stone like wrote the chords to both of those songs because it has that kind of Stone almost like quirky quality, but then Shawn's vocals and lyrics it takes it a little bit more of a serious tone. And I really like how the song develops. There's I think also like a little horns near kind of the end. And the ending is what I really like of the song where he's repeatedly singing "Take me home, take me back home." And again, maybe it's just because he's passed away, and thinking of this being one of those songs he recorded before he passed away kind of evokes like emotions out of me. But I did find it to be very moving.
Yeah, see, for me, this song is a little bit too kind of one tone for me. I feel like I don't know, the first like 2 minutes are kind of slow. I don't feel like there's a lot happening. That's super catchy, and then like the middle part is pretty cool where it changes. It is an interesting texture and contrast. So I don't know. For me, it's not my favorite, but it's a little more consistent than maybe Meadow and Autumn with the whole, we'll call it the Irish ending.
Now, the song that really has grown on me is "Without Guns." "Without Guns" is I think the other Brad song of the album, other than "Straight to the Hoop," because "Without Guns" starts off with just like this very thick bass tone, like just bass intro, and like the notes that Keith's playing just reminds me of like Interiors and like Welcome to Discovery Park, that era of Brad, their second and third album. And just the whole song has a very like just I don't know how to describe it, just very Brad, like the chords and just like the notes, the progression is just it's it's again, it's a song where I don't know what he's singing about. He's talking about living like growing up without guns his whole life. So I don't know if there's like some like political statement, but like or if it's a metaphor, but it just fits like the vibe of the song. And it's a nice pick me up after the two ballads. And
See, I
I
don't
think
think it's a big enough pick me up though.
oh, see, I
The two
disagree
ba-
because then you get Hey Now What's the Problem After, which is like the other kind of more like fast power, power chord rock song.
See, and I think that would have been better, honestly, to follow Take Me Back Home.
That's it. So we have some disagreements, but I mean you still like Without Guns, right? Or you
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. I wouldn't put it above any of the other rock ones though.
see I liked Hey Now What's the Problem when it came out, but I think you definitely liked him more. I think I like Without Guns more than it.
I mean, it's definitely a simple one, but I think it really hits hard though. Hey, now what's the problem? And
And I
I
also
like his voice too on it. I like I think the vocal production I actually really do enjoy on this album. There's a good amount of variety and
yeah,
some kind of thick but silky tones from it.
I will say I think Stone and Keith and Reagan and whoever produced the album, if it was someone else other than the three of them, they did a great job at taking Shawn's like final vocal moments and really doing them justice. And I also like I'm Digging You. I think you like it a little bit more than me. That one's still growing on me. I'm Digging You is really weird because like it has like I think like the most like changes throughout the song. It has kind of interesting bridge. You get the horns coming back. It's a little repetitive in the chorus, but it's a very interesting chorus, especially with like the verses. So
It
I
sounds like a total like Discovery Park or Best Friends like hook.
yeah, you texted me. You're like, it kind of reminds me of Welcome to Discovery Park, and I was kind of thinking, and it was like trying to be a little bit like the song from Discovery Park called "La La La," which is one of my favorites from the album. I still like "La La La" more than "I'm Digging You," but "I'm Digging You" does have it's just got a fun groove. It's not like a fast rock song, but it's like a fun kind of just groovy rock song. I do enjoy it.
I also like the little section after I think it's like the second chorus where Sean's just doing like these la la la's, kind of like
Yeah,
improvising, and it's a little bit off pitch, a little bit like it feels very like intimate.
but it's like a
It's a super cool moment.
and it's something that they would do a lot in their songs, like okay, we just literally talked about a song called La La La, but like even on Welcome to Discovery Park, Never Let Each Other Down, the bridge of that song is Shawn Smith going wah 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 wah.
Yeah, like WAH.
Yeah. And it almost sounds like it was supposed to be a placeholder, like when he was recording the song to add in either other lyrics or like a solo, and they just left it in, and it somehow works perfect for the song.
I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, that has to be how that came to be. I refuse to believe otherwise.
And then we got to talk about the album closer called Simple Subtraction. It's another ballad to end the album, but unlike the previous album's closer on United We Stand called Through the Day, I much prefer Simple Subtraction. It's a little bit shorter, it's a little bit more to the point, and even though it repeats like the piano bit throughout the song, like Through the Day, I like the piano playing more on it because it's a little bit more not simple. I don't know what the word is, like simple, like a little bit more stripped back, very pretty, very like it's moving. Sean singing about like he's like reminiscing on like a relationship, it sounds like he's talking about like him and someone else like watching the stars, and he keeps repeating the phrase "we were so young." And as the song like comes to an end, it's just like the piano just kind of gets higher and higher and playing almost a little bit kind of like um if you could make it good in that sense, just not as dynamic, not as loud. But since this is probably going to be like the final song on the final Brad album we ever get, I did find it very moving.
Yeah, it it is very pretty, very stripped back. I would say it's really effective as a song, and it's one that I think is easy to kind of overlook. But I found myself like the first, few times I listened to the album, like I found myself getting, into this song. Like it was one that was really enjoyable and touching. Um, it kind of does like that thing that Take Me Back Home does, where it's like very much one mood they're developing. And even though Take Me Back Home does go to other places, I think, once again, being kind of straightforward really works well and for Simple Subtraction.
Yeah,
But overall, though, I think a big thing that makes me enjoy this album a lot is the production. Because I just think they did a great job having like these real like garage rocky guitar tones that sound big and full and warm. And then you got like, Sean's like signature voice, like singing lower in spots. There's some rock numbers. It's just, I think it's a really great album. And, when a band has what, like 6 albums over like 3 decades, there's definitely a lot of time to, maybe change or to get out of the swing of things. But I think they really nailed it for their last album. And I'm really happy that this is the album that we got.
yeah, both great points because, like you said, most bands who have released albums since the or even early '90s, you would think they'd have more albums than 6, but it makes sense when you know most media considers this to be a side project from Stone, even though I'm sure Stone's never seen it that way. It's just one of his bands. They just
Right.
never had the success of Pearl Jam, and but for them to only release 6 albums, not a lot. But there's some bands that just don't release a ton of album. I almost compare them to like the Killers in that sense. Killers have been out since 2000, and they're just releasing what, album 8, maybe the end of this year, next year. But like with the Killers, for them to be able to produce an album this great, this far into the career, I think is just, shows you how great of a band they are. And I think also, to add to your point, I also like how you mentioned that you're glad this was the last album we got. And I am too. Like, to end on this note, even though it is like bittersweet, I think it's a great note to end on. And it should be noted that I think the band members have mentioned that down the road, but they might reissue some albums, and each album has had some like B-sides and songs not released. So we could also maybe get a compilation album at some point. And they also mentioned about releasing some live albums, because I think, like a lot of bands these days, they have recorded some songs, or some live shows, some concerts. And we maybe could get a live album from them one day, which I think would be fantastic, especially if it's a concert later in the career where you can get a bit of everything, from Shame, Discovery Park, Interiors, a little of everything. So, but yeah, Tony, you have any lasting thoughts? Oh, you want to, before we close out the show, do you want to talk about how you celebrated the release date for this album?
Oh yeah. So for the release of the album, they did a signing at Easy Street Records, and it was cool. Showed up, I bought a copy, got it signed from the band. Wish Shawn could be there, of course. But it was fun to celebrate the release, especially being really happy with how the album sounds. And it came on pink vinyl, very exciting.
Yes,
Um,
I also think a white. I have a copy of it on white, and I think there's also just a standard black one. I'm not sure though, but yeah. And
the other sad note though is I had ordered their first record on like I think they called it Shame Gray, but that one has yet to be received. Dealing with that.
um, and I want to mention, because you're too humble to, but you went with our dad, and you guys got me a copy signed. The band signed one and wrote my name on it, which was very thoughtful for you guys to do, because I couldn't be there. But I have such good memories of going and doing the exact same thing when they released United We Stand. So for you guys to get me a signed copy was very sweet. So I can't wait to get that and add that to my collection. And yeah, any last thoughts you want to add to the band, about the band?
um, no, I don't think so. Other than give them a listen. Really cool stuff. I really appreciate that they have their sound. Like you hear a Brad song and you're like, okay, that's a song that only Brad could have written.
Especially too for the night, even though, like, you weren't born even then, but like even me, when like being born, in the right, almost in the middle of the 90s, like, I'm sure for the 90s, with such the heavy grunge rock sound, everything sounding like, like angsty and depressing, like to have a band like Brad, I think I would have loved to hear that in the 90s. And I do think they get very underappreciated, which is why we're doing this episode. But just because, like, they're just, they didn't have hit singles, and Pearl Jam just always overshadowed them, and they never got their due. So, we definitely wanted to highlight them, and this was the perfect time since they released their final album, and this is kind of putting, I think, a bow on their career. And I would have loved for them to continue on. Rest in peace, Shawn. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. Definitely go check out really any of their albums. Give them all a listen. Even if you start with the new album, I think that would be a great place to start. I mean, there's not really a bad Brad album, so go give them a listen. And then I think just wrap up this episode. The next 2 weeks should be us returning to our album for album series. And we might as well announce those albums. That way people want to go ahead and start giving them a listen. I am giving Tony Ben Folds' first solo album titled Rock in the Suburbs came out in 2001. And we are doing this because later this month in August, we are seeing Ben Folds in Seattle together with Bryce, who was featured on last week's episode, which if you haven't listened, go listen. And we are also going to be doing a concert review at the end of this month where we talk about the concert. But I figured since Tony's never heard that whole Rock in the Suburbs album front to back, it'd be perfect for the best time for him to listen to it. So that's what I'm giving him for this month. Tony, what are you giving me for this month?
And I will be giving you Mark Lanigan's 2014 release Phantom Radio by the Mark Lanigan Band, which is actually, I think, the first like Lanigan record that I got into. So very excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen because I don't think I've ever heard a full album of his before.
Yeah, I'm definitely more familiar with Ben Folds than you are with Lanigan. But
well, that's not true. Actually, the only full album I've heard of his for some reason is his covers album for some reason.
Yeah, because I think that was one of the ones he rented from the library.
Yeah. I think that helped us get into like Queens of the Stone Age, because he, sang a lot in the early Queens of the Stone Age albums. So I'm very excited to jump into just his own material now, especially because I've loved a lot of what he's sung on Queens of the Stone Age albums. So this will be a very fun month. Very fun month for album series. And then we'll have the Ben Folds review at the very end of the month. So stay tuned for those episodes. And until then, we hope you take care and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.